I often get asked, well, how much should I salary sacrifice? And there's 3 criteria that I'm going to talk through here. Now, ideally, you would reduce your taxable income to the 15% marginal tax rate. So thinking about those thresholds that we saw earlier in the table about the structures that you can choose to invest in, the 15% marginal tax rate applies up until $37,000 of taxable income. Over $37,000, your tax rate is 30%. So ideally, you would bring your taxable income down to at least that $37,000. And to do that, you salary sacrifice $10,000. So on a $47,000 income, you salary sacrifice $10,000 to your superannuation account, and that reduces your taxable income down to the 15% tax threshold, and it brings about $1,650 worth of annual tax savings. Now, a couple of things here to note is that you can actually salary sacrifice down to the $30,000 amount at the moment and get an additional $400 in tax savings. Now, that's due to what we call a low income tax offset that you get full access to when your taxable income is $30,000. So there is sometimes some benefit in bringing your salary sacrificing the extra $7,000 to bring your taxable income down to $30,000. But generally, what people do is focus on getting down to that $37,000, 15% marginal tax rate. Just one other thing is that with the carbon tax announcements, the changes to the proposed tax thresholds mean that there is going to be a 19%, if it is legislated and implemented, then the new tax rates that are going to be introduced as part of the carbon tax are going to start at 19% at around the $20,000 mark. So there is going to be in the future, if that structure is implemented, there's going to be a case for salary sacrificing down to as low as the $20,000 income threshold, because there's going to be a benefit of doing that. So if the carbon tax is implemented, think about that, or salary sacrificing down to a lower amount. But under the current regime, this is what you should consider doing. So the idea is to reduce your taxable income down to the 15% marginal tax rate, or $37,000. The other thing you need to consider is don't exceed your concessional contribution limits. So let's look at an example of someone who is over 50 years of age and earning an income of $87,000. Now, if our aim is to get our taxable income down to $37,000, we might plan to salary sacrifice $50,000 and put that into our superannuation account, and therefore we reduce our taxable income down to that target amount of $37,000. But if we did that in this scenario, it would mean that we would exceed our contribution limits, because the concessional contribution cap of $50,000 includes our superannuation guarantee payments, so the 9% of the $87,000. So what we should be doing here is not salary sacrificing $50,000, but salary sacrificing $42,170, because 9% of the $87,000 income is what's that? $7,830. So the ideal amount here to salary sacrifice, so we don't breach our contribution limits, is $42,170. So don't salary sacrifice to the point that you exceed your contribution limits. The other thing that you need to consider when salary sacrificing is ensuring that you meet your cash flow requirements. Using the example of the $87,000 income again for somebody who's over 50, we might think that we can actually salary sacrifice that full $42,170 and put that into our super account. But we might find that when we do that, we don't have enough income to live on. There's an income gap. Now, we can do a couple of things to address that. One thing is that we could salary sacrifice less, so potentially $20,000, put that amount into our super fund, and that would mean that we potentially would have enough money to live on. The drawback of that approach is that we're missing out on potentially over $3,000 worth of tax savings by not salary sacrificing the maximum amount. So a way around that could potentially be Still salary sacrifice the full $42,170 into your super fund, but then draw some money from your superannuation, take some pension income, and this is what we basically call a transition to retirement strategy. The key requirement to actually do this is reaching your preservation age, which is currently 55. But this is what we'll focus on for the remainder of the session, this transition to retirement strategy.